Aygun Muchuk's name echoes through Germany's outlaw biker world as a symbol of power, loyalty, and unresolved mystery. Rising from a quiet, largely undocumented early life to become president of the Hells Angels Gießen chapter, he built influence in a scene marked by intense rivalries and shifting alliances. His violent death in 2016, shot multiple times outside his clubhouse, sent shockwaves through Europe's biker network. Who was he really? And what forces shaped the path that led to his assassination? Early life, origins, and environment. Aygun Muchuk's early life, while not extensively documented in official records, fits within a familiar social landscape that shaped many second-generation immigrant families in Germany during the 1970s and 1980s. Born to a Turkish family, he grew up in an era when the country was still adapting to its changing demographic fabric. Guest worker programs had brought thousands of Turkish workers into West Germany, and by the time Muchuk was a child, these communities were no longer temporary labor groups. They were establishing roots, starting families, and raising German-born children caught between two cultural spheres. Cities like Gießen and the wider Hesse region carried a unique mix of industrial environments and immigrant neighborhoods. Young people in these areas navigated schools where identity was fluid. At home, Turkish language and traditions remained important, while outside, German norms dominated the street. This type of dual upbringing often produced a toughened social awareness. Kids grew up fast, developed sharp instincts, and learned early on how to defend themselves socially, verbally, and physically. During the era of Muchuk's adolescence, German youth culture was shifting. Hip-hop, street gangs, football fan groups, and motorcycle clubs all pulled at young men looking for belonging. The biker world, in particular, presented an image of strength, rebellion, and tribal loyalty. Even if he had no connection to motorcycles as a child, the subculture's codes, brotherhood, honor, courage, the refusal to bow, would have been attractive to anyone growing up in a tough environment. By the early 2000s, many young men from immigrant backgrounds were entering Germany's biker scene. Some joined for the motorcycles, others for the structure, and still others for the sense of belonging missing from fractured social spaces. For someone like Aygun Muchuk, who developed a reputation for being charismatic, assertive, and unafraid of confrontation, the MC world offered the perfect stage. While official biographies rarely detail his teenage years, law enforcement assessments and media coverage later described him as someone who rose quickly in influence. This suggests he possessed early leadership traits: loyalty, boldness, the ability to command attention, qualities that often set future MC leaders apart long before they ever sit on a chopper. By the time Muchuk made his first steps toward biker life, he was already shaped by a backdrop of cultural tension, economic strain, street-level toughness, and the search for identity that marked many young men of his generation in Germany. This foundation would define how he fought, led, and ultimately how he was remembered. Entry into biker life and first contact with the Hells Angels. The gateway into the Hells Angels world rarely opens suddenly. More often, it begins with small encounters: parties, friends of friends, gatherings at local bars, or simply admiration from a distance. For Aygun Muchuk, whose adulthood aligned with the rise of major MC activity in central Germany, these paths were all around him. Central Hesse had become a battleground for motorcycle club influence, with the Hells Angels, Bandidos, and various smaller groups contesting territory, recruitment, and public presence. By the early 2000s, Germany's biker scene had gained enormous attention. Police surveillance increased, media coverage intensified, and the public became fascinated with the imagery of leather, chrome, and underworld brotherhood. This environment was electrifying. If someone sought a life with adrenaline, identity, loyalty structures, and respect written into its bones, the MC world delivered all of it. Muchuk's initial entry into biker circles likely started, as it does for many, with proximity. Friends already riding, local hangouts connected to club supporters, public events where Hells Angels chapters would showcase their presence. People who were drawn to the lifestyle often found themselves pulled in deeper through relationships rather than formal invitations. He eventually joined the Hells Angels Gießen chapter, one of the most discussed and controversial charters in Germany. Becoming a hang-around and then a prospect involved a process built on patience, discipline, and constant observation. Prospects are tested relentlessly. Every action is watched, Every mistake is noted, respect is earned through service, toughness, and unwavering commitment. Muchuk stood out early. Reports from German media and law enforcement later described him as a man who had a natural command over people. He carried himself with confidence, sometimes edging into confrontation, but always maintaining the kind of presence that draws loyalty. Within the club environment, where hierarchy and authority matter more than nearly anything else, this was invaluable. His dedication to the chapter earned him the trust of senior members, particularly during periods of tension with other clubs. As Germany's biker world entered years marked by conflicts, raids, and power struggles, Muchuk's reliability and boldness positioned him as a rising figure. What set him apart, even at this early stage, was not simply aggression, plenty possessed that, but an ability to lead. Those traits would soon become central to his rise and to the turbulence that surrounded him. Rise to leadership and the Gießen chapter. The trajectory from prospect to full member to chapter leader is steep, and few climb it as rapidly or as forcefully as Agun Muchuk did. The Gießen Charter, established in an area that already carried strong subcultural energy, became the center of a major internal struggle within the Hells Angels network in Germany. This environment provided fertile ground for ambitious members, but it also demanded resilience and the ability to survive power shifts. By the early 2000s, Muchuk had built a reputation strong enough to position him as a key figure within the charter. He gained the presidency of the Hells Angels Gießen chapter, an elevation that placed him in direct rivalry with factions loyal to the Frankfurt Charter. This internal dispute, while complex, boiled down to control of territory, prestige, and influence within the massive national network of the Hells Angels. Under Muchuk's leadership, the Gießen chapter developed a distinct identity. It attracted members who admired his style. Assertive, bold, uncompromising, the clubhouse became a center of constant activity, drawing attention from supporters, rivals, and police. German authorities frequently described the chapter as one of the more active and confrontational groups in the region. This period was marked by raids, investigations, and internal reorganizations. Police monitored the chapter heavily, sometimes launching coordinated operations involving dozens of officers. But each intervention seemed only to harden the chapter's resolve. To many inside the biker world, Muchuk symbolized a new kind of presence, a leader who combined street intelligence with the hardened loyalty demanded by outlaw clubs. With the national structure of the Hells Angels attempting to maintain order between its various charters, the Gießen-Frankfurt tensions created constant friction. Reports suggested that personal rivalries and disputes over authority played a major role. As president, Muchuk held enough power to shape decisions, events, and responses to perceived threats. That level of autonomy sometimes put him at odds with other senior figures across the German Hells Angels scene. Despite the pressures, he remained a charismatic leader. People followed him because he inspired confidence, not just fear. He cultivated loyalty through presence, showing up, standing firm in disputes, defending his chapter, and demonstrating unflinching commitment to the club's identity. But leadership in outlaw motorcycle culture often comes with a countdown attached. The higher a figure rises, the more attention, resentment, and danger they attract. For Muchuk, this reality escalated quickly, setting the stage for the clashes that defined his final years. Germany's MC landscape and broader context. To understand why Agun Muchuk became such a central figure, one must look beyond the personal and into the wider landscape he operated in. Germany's motorcycle club environment is among the most developed outside the United States. Germany's MC landscape and broader context. To understand why Agun Muchuk became such a central figure, one must look beyond the personal and into the wider landscape he operated in. Germany's motorcycle club environment is among the most developed outside the United States. With established charters, organized leadership, and extensive rivalries, it is a world where territory matters as much as reputation. During the 2000s and 2010s, the Hells Angels, Bandidos, and several regional clubs fought for influence in German cities. These conflicts weren't constant, but they flared often, sometimes violently. Territorial boundaries, social influence, and recruitment were key issues. Cities like Berlin, Hamburg, Frankfurt, Cologne, and regions such as North Rhine-Westphalia and Hesse became centers of MC activity. Laws also evolved. German authorities introduced more aggressive strategies, banning local club symbols in certain cities, raiding clubhouses, and designating some chapters as criminal organizations. These measures tightened pressure on clubs, but also intensified their sense of brotherhood and defiance. The immigrant background of many younger members shaped the subculture as well. For second-generation Turkish, Arab, Kurdish, Balkan, and Eastern European youths, MCs offered an identity outside traditional frameworks. The lifestyle provided pride, respect, structure, and a sense of belonging. In this context, leaders like Muchuk became symbols, not only within the Hells Angels, but also within a broader generation that felt misunderstood by mainstream society. Media coverage amplified everything. Journalists portrayed Muchuk as intimidating, powerful, and connected to internal disputes that stretched across several German states. Police considered his chapter influential and sometimes difficult to manage due to its tightly knit membership. This broader environment, cultural tension, heightened police pressure, national MC rivalries, and generational identity challenges formed the background against which Muchuk rose. His name didn't become prominent merely because he led a charter. It became prominent because he led one during a period where every move in Germany's biker world was magnified by conflict, surveillance, and competition. The turbulence of these years is essential to understanding why his leadership mattered and why his death sent a shockwave that still echoes in discussions of German MC history. Rivalries, tensions, and internal conflicts. The conflict between the Gießen and Frankfurt Hells Angels chapters became one of the most discussed disputes in Germany's biker world. While details remain tied to police files and internal club secrecy, what is publicly known is that the tension was long-running, often bitter, and involved personal and organizational disagreements. At the heart of the rivalry was control over reputation, structure, membership, and influence within the Hells Angels network. Muchuk's assertive leadership style gave the Gießen chapter a strong identity that sometimes clashed with the priorities of other Hells Angels leaders. Frankfurt, long established and influential, saw itself as a central authority. Gießen, newer and more defiant under Muchuk, pushed boundaries. The rivalry led to several public confrontations. Police repeatedly responded to violent incidents, suspected retaliatory acts, and attempted negotiations between factions. At times, the conflict spilled into the streets through brawls, ambushes, and intimidation efforts. Authorities increased surveillance, launching raids on both sides, collecting weapons, and monitoring communication. The animosity wasn't merely organizational. Various media reports suggested personal fractures. Leadership disputes within outlaw motorcycle clubs often mix power, pride, and history, elements that make resolution difficult. Two presidents, two styles, two visions for their respective charters can create a rift that grows deeper with every confrontation. During these years, Muchuk became a symbol of resistance within his own circle. His chapter supported him fiercely, which only sharpened the divide. Supporters viewed him as a leader who stood up to larger forces, both internal and external. Detractors saw him as challenging established order. Whatever the exact causes, the feud turned dangerous. German police categorized the situation as potentially volatile, warning that escalations could lead to severe violence. Law enforcement agencies across Hesse coordinated operations, anticipating retaliation cycles. Muchuk's leadership meant he often stood at the front of these disputes. This visibility increased his influence, but also his vulnerability. In MC culture, rivalries don't stay theoretical. They become personal battles for honor, security, and dominance. The Gießen-Frankfurt conflict didn't just define the final years of Muchuk's life. It shaped the narrative surrounding him, turning him from a regional chapter president into one of the most talked-about figures in Germany's outlaw biker world, a status that carried both prestige and danger. Police pressure, legal actions, and public perception. Throughout his leadership, Muchuk operated under constant scrutiny from German authorities. Law enforcement maintained a strong presence around the Gießen chapter, monitoring meetings, tracking events, and executing raids whenever intelligence suggested potential threats. These operations were not unique to Gießen. They were part of a nationwide strategy to curb violence within the MC world. But the tension between the clubs and police intensified because major chapters like Muchuk's were highly active and often at the center of disputes. Some raids involved dozens of officers, armored vehicles, dog units, and coordinated searches of clubhouses and homes. Weapons, documents, and electronics were seized as police investigated suspected criminal structures. While being the target of these operations brought legal complications, they also increased the chapter's internal solidarity. Each raid reinforced the idea of being under siege, strengthening loyalty among members. Media coverage portrayed Muchuk as a polarizing figure, feared in biker circles, notorious to the public, and significant enough to headline major crime reports. Newspapers highlighted his leadership style, the ongoing internal disputes, and the growing list of violent confrontations in the region. For the general public, he became the face of the Hells Angels in Hesse. This public image shaped how authorities approached the chapter. Increased surveillance, restrictions on MC insignias in public, and heightened prosecution strategies defined the environment in which he operated. Germany's law enforcement approach to MCS during this period was among the strongest in Europe, and leaders like Muchuk found themselves confronting a legal system determined to reduce the influence of outlaw biker clubs. Despite the pressure, he continued to maintain control over his chapter. The Gießen Hells Angels adapted, reorganized, and kept functioning. For supporters, the ability to withstand police scrutiny was proof of strong leadership. For critics, it was evidence of ongoing underground structures. This non-stop pressure created a landscape in which stability was nearly impossible. Every rivalry, every confrontation, and every police operation added weight to the already volatile situation surrounding Muchuk. Still, he navigated these pressures with defiance, reinforcing his reputation as a determined and uncompromising leader. The killing, aftermath, and investigation. On October 7, 2016, the power struggle within the biker world took its most dramatic and violent turn. Aygun Muchuk was found dead in front of the Hells Angels clubhouse in Gießen, having been shot multiple times. The scene was discovered early in the morning, and by the time police secured the area, it was clear this was no random attack. The precision and brutality suggested planning, knowledge of his movements, and a clear intention to eliminate him. The killing shocked Germany's biker community. Within hours, media outlets reported that one of the country's most influential Hells Angels figures had been assassinated. Police launched a large-scale investigation, sealing locations, interviewing associates, and examining the ongoing internal disputes that surrounded him. Given the intensity of the rivalry between the Gießen and Frankfurt chapters, speculation immediately spread, though no individual was officially convicted for the murder. The crime triggered a massive response from law enforcement. Authorities feared retaliatory violence, especially given the scale of the internal feud. Extra patrols were deployed across Hesse, and police prepared for possible escalations involving other MC clubs as well. The biker world braced for fallout, expecting clashes in the days that followed. His funeral became a defining moment. Hundreds of bikers gathered to pay respects. Hells Angels from various cities, supporters, friends, and observers who came to witness the farewell of a figure whose presence had shaped their chapter's identity. Long lines of motorcycles, organized escort formations, and a heavy police presence marked the procession. The event underscored his status, controversial, powerful, and respected within his circle. In the aftermath, the Gießen chapter faced a leadership vacuum and increasing surveillance. Without its assertive president, the power dynamics shifted. Some members left, others reorganized, and the club tried to navigate the weight of ongoing investigations alongside internal restructuring. The murder intensified national discussions about biker violence and prompted renewed calls for stricter enforcement. Years later, the case remains unsolved, at least in the public domain. Police investigations continue periodically, but the MC world is known for its silence. The lack of resolution adds to the mythos around Muchuk. Supporters remember him as a strong leader whose death left a permanent scar on their history. To outsiders, the unsolved nature of the crime only deepens the intrigue surrounding the man whose influence reshaped the German biker landscape. His legacy and the enduring shadow over German MC history. Aygun Muchuk's legacy remains complex. Within the biker world, he is remembered as a forceful leader who stood his ground in one of the most contested regions of Germany. His rise from a second-generation immigrant background to the presidency of a powerful Hells Angels chapter reflects the broader changes in Germany's subcultures during the early 21st century. His story echoes themes of identity, loyalty, ambition, and confrontation. The unresolved nature of his murder leaves an open wound in MC history. It symbolizes the dangers of leadership in a world where power, loyalty, and violence often overlap. For the Gießen chapter, his absence reshaped their identity, forcing them to navigate new leadership structures under immense pressure. For the Hells Angels internationally, his death became a reminder of the internal vulnerabilities that can emerge even within highly structured brotherhoods. German authorities continue to consider his chapter and related groups significant in the nation's biker landscape. His influence lingers in police briefings, academic studies on organized groups, and media retrospectives analyzing the evolution of MC culture in Europe. More broadly, his story represents the crossing of cultural, generational, and social identities. He stood at the intersection of German and Turkish worlds, navigating both with toughness and confidence. Leaders like him become larger than themselves, symbols of a scene, of an era, and of the struggles that defined it. Even years after his death, discussions about the Hells Angels in Germany often circle back to him. His name still carries weight, feared, respected, controversial, and unforgettable. In the end, Aygun Muchuk became not just a chapter president, but a defining figure in the history of European motorcycle clubs.